You know, what if the answer to your biggest, most impossible problems isn't in some modern business book? What if it's actually been hiding in plain sight for 80 years in the story of a war machine? See, this isn't just a history lesson about some old airplane. Nope, this is a blueprint, a detailed, step-by-step guide showing how a combination of brilliant engineering, sheer American industrial might, and a totally radical shift in thinking didn't just win a war, it completely rewrote the playbook on how you win. Okay, let's dive into this. I want you to really put yourself here for a second. It's 1943, you're a young American airman, probably barely out of your teens, and you've been told that if you can just survive 25 bombing runs over Europe, you get your ticket home. But the math, the cold, hard, brutal math, tells a completely different story. The life expectancy of a B-17 crew is just 15 missions. That means, statistically, you're not going home. This wasn't just a risk, it was a statistical certainty of death or capture. This was the grim reality for the 8th Air Force, and it was a problem that seemed utterly, mathematically impossible to solve.
You know, every great comeback story has to have a low point, right? A moment where all hope just seems lost. Well, for the American strategic bombing campaign, that moment has a name: Black Thursday. And this wasn't just a bad day. This was the day the entire strategy nearly fell apart.
I mean, can you just picture it? Teletype machines just clattering the way in the middle of the night at 8th Air Force headquarters, punching out this message one grim word at a time. 60 bombers. That's not just a number. That's 600 men gone in one day. The message from Colonel Curtis LeMay was blunt. It was basically a death sentence for the entire doctrine of American air power. He officially recommended that they stop all deep penetration missions immediately. Back in Washington, General Hap Arnold reads this telegram, and he knows that everything they had built, everything they believed about winning the war from the air, was just hanging by a thread. The enemy, it seemed, had built a perfect killing machine. The German defense system wasn't just a bunch of fighters flying around. No. It was this sophisticated, layered system, a massive conveyor belt of death. The moment the bomber formations crossed the coast, bam, the first wave of single-engine fighters would hit them. Go a little deeper, and you'd meet the heavy twin-engine fighters, which would hang back just out of range of the bomber's machine guns and fire these huge 210mm rockets right into the formations. One of those could literally disintegrate a B-17. Their whole goal was to break the formations apart, leaving individual bombers totally vulnerable for that final layer, the elite fighter units protecting the heart of Germany. They even perfected this tactic of attacking head-on, which was the B-17's weakest spot. It was a meat grinder, and the Americans were flying straight into it with no answer at all.
So, with the whole bombing campaign on the brink of complete failure, where did the answer come from? A top-secret government project? A committee of generals? Nah. The solution came from this unlikely mix of British desperation, American industrial know-how, and what was basically a heart transplant for an airplane.
The story here is just incredible. So back in 1940, the British asked this company, North American Aviation, to build them some existing P-40 fighters. But the company's president, a guy nicknamed Dutch, he makes a counteroffer that would change history. He basically said, "We can build you a better plane, and we can do it just as fast." And they did. 102 days later, the prototype was already flying. It was a brilliant airframe, revolutionary even, but its American Allison engine was super weak at high altitude. So the plane had a great body, but a really weak heart. The big breakthrough came when a Rolls-Royce test pilot flew it and had this flash of genius. He realized that this American airframe, combined with Britain's powerful supercharged Merlin engine, the same engine that powered the Spitfire, could be absolutely unstoppable. And the difference was just night and day. The Allison engine was fine down low, but up where the bombers were flying, it was just gasping for air. The Rolls-Royce Merlin, though, with its two-stage supercharger, it thrived in that thin, cold air. But the crucial part, the thing that changed everything, was the combat radius. The Allison-powered plane had pretty limited range. The Merlin-powered Mustang, especially with some extra fuel tanks, could fly 850 miles. This simple engine swap transformed a good plane into the game-changing weapon that the Allies were desperately needing.
Let's just pause on that number for a second. 850 miles. Why is that the number that changed the war? Because the distance from the American bases in England to the absolute heart of the Reich, to Berlin itself, was about 580 miles. Before the Merlin-powered Mustang, no Allied fighter could go that far, get into a fight, and make it home. The bombers always had to fly the most dangerous part of their mission all alone. This number, 850 miles, meant that for the very first time, the bombers were going to have a guardian angel, a little friend, all the way to Berlin and all the way back. The strategic map of Europe had just been completely redrawn.
But here's a really critical lesson. The greatest tool in the world is totally useless if you're still playing by the old rules. Having the P-51 Mustang wasn't enough. To truly turn the tide, the Americans needed a leader who was willing to just tear up the rulebook and unleash its full potential.
So in January 1944, a new commander takes over the 8th Air Force, General James Doolittle. One of the first things he does is visit his fighter command headquarters, and on the wall he sees this sign that says, "The first duty of 8th Air Force fighters is to bring the bombers back alive." Doolittle looks at it and just says, "Take it down." He replaced it with a whole new philosophy, and it's captured perfectly in this quote. This wasn't just a new sign on the wall. It was a declaration of a whole new kind of war. Before Doolittle, fighter pilots were basically guard dogs on a leash. Their orders were to stick super close to the bombers, flying these weaving patterns above them in a purely defensive way. It was a reactive, protective mindset. Doolittle's order cut that leash. He told his pilots to stop waiting for the enemy to come to them. He wanted them to become hunters. They were now totally free to fly way ahead of the bombers, to sweep into enemy territory, and to seek out and destroy German fighters wherever they could find them, in the air, while they were forming up, or even on their own airfields.
So what happens when you combine the deadliest fighter plane in the sky with a new, ruthlessly aggressive strategy? You get a turning point. You get that moment where the hunter becomes the hunted, on a scale the world had never, ever seen before.
The first major test of this new reality came in February of 1944, during an operation that became known as Big Week. For 6 straight days, thousands of American bombers, escorted by hundreds of fighters, including those new P-51s, just pounded German aircraft factories. It was a full-scale test of the new strategy, with Mustang pilots ranging deep into Germany, hunting the Luftwaffe on its own turf. The results were absolutely catastrophic for the Luftwaffe. They lost over 350 fighters in just 1 week. But the number of planes wasn't even the real story. The truly devastating blow was the loss of 17% of their experienced fighter pilots, their aces, their veterans. Think about it. You can build a new airplane in a few weeks, but you can't replace a lifetime of combat experience. This 1 week broke the back of the veteran Luftwaffe fighter corps. And then came the psychological death blow. On March 4th, 1944, for the first time in the war, American fighters showed up in the skies over Berlin. For the German people and their leaders, this was an unimaginable shock. The war had always been something fought out there. Now the enemy was in their backyard, over their capital, challenging the very heart of the Reich. You can even hear it on captured radio intercepts. The German controllers, their voices just filled with confusion and total disbelief. You don't have to take my word for it. Just listen to the enemy. This is what Hermann Goering, the head of the German Air Force, said after the war. This wasn't some strategic calculation. This was an admission of total, utter psychological defeat. The sight of those silver fighters, 1,000 miles from their homes, it just signaled the end. The technological and tactical problem had been solved so completely that it broke the enemy's will to even fight. Now, this victory in the air over Germany wasn't just an end in itself. It was the crucial prerequisite, the thing that had to happen for the next and most important phase of the war, the invasion of Europe. You simply cannot launch the largest amphibious invasion in history if the enemy controls the sky above you. The result of this campaign was total air supremacy. And the numbers on D-Day, June 6, 1944, they tell the entire story. While Allied aircraft flew over 13,000 missions over the beaches of Normandy, the once mighty Luftwaffe could only manage a measly 319. The German army on the ground was completely blinded and defenseless from the air. This was only possible because in the months leading up to that invasion, the P-51 Mustang had systematically annihilated the German fighter force. So, the crucial takeaway here is this final staggering statistic. Almost 5,000. That's the number of German aircraft destroyed in aerial combat by P-51 Mustangs alone. This single aircraft type accounted for nearly half of all American air-to-air victories against the Luftwaffe. It was, without a doubt, the weapon that won the air war over Europe.
Okay, so we've seen how a piece of technology and a shift in strategy completely changed the course of history. But what does this all mean for you? Why does this 80-year-old story still matter today? Because it's not just a story, it really is a blueprint, a repeatable framework for solving your own impossible problems.
Okay, let's break it down. Step 1, you've got to find your Merlin engine. What is that one tool, that one technology, maybe that one partnership that can fundamentally transform your capabilities from just being good to being an absolute game changer? Step 2, take down the sign. What's that core assumption, that defensive rule, like bring the bombers back alive, that is holding you back? You've got to have the courage, like Jimmy Doolittle, to tear it down and go on the attack. And finally, step 3, build the system. The Mustang was a brilliant machine, but it needed a system of mass production, superior pilot training, and visionary leadership to achieve victory. A single tool is never enough. You need a robust system to support it.
So I'll leave you with this final thought. We all operate under a set of rules and assumptions, right? In our work, in our lives. A lot of them are there to keep us safe, to keep us in a defensive posture. But what this story teaches us is that sometimes victory isn't found in a better defense. It's found in unleashing a new capability and having the courage to finally go on the attack. So my question to you is this. What is your bring the bombers back alive sign? What is the one assumption you follow every single day that you need to tear down to truly win?